Joining us with reaction is former senior counselor to President Trump, Kellyanne Conway, Outkick founder Clay Travis, and Fox News contributor Charlie Hurt. Kellyanne, where to start? There's so many serious aspects to what was reported on with what's going on at our border. And Joe Biden's in Seattle on Earth Day talking about electric tanks. I don't know how to square that circle.
Well, he went near the Canadian border anyway, and none of this makes any sense to anyone. In fact, to go all the way to Seattle, roughly a 4,700-mile round trip, emitting enough carbon that represents about 8 Americans' carbon output for the year through Air Force One, and then to not even memorize a couple of good lines, to not even be able to be conversant or compelling or persuasive or memorable. Joe Biden talks like that every single day for free without going anywhere except walking down from the residence in the White House. We didn't need him to go across the country. And by the way, where is he tonight? He's going back for his 33rd trip to Delaware. He has spent 25% of this presidency on Operation Wilmington at home. That would be fine, except why didn't he just stop off in Philly? Why didn't he stop off in Philly and say, you know what, here in Pennsylvania it doesn't look like it, but you're living in a border state. Fentanyl is the #1 killer of 18 to 44-year-olds. Crime is on the rise. People are flooding into every state. Roughly, I was in Atlanta last night with Newt Gingrich. He gave a speech, and he was saying it's basically in Atlanta every month coming over the border, roughly 7,000 people a day or so. And so any way you look at it, this is a country in crisis, chaos, crisis, and a president's not doing anything about it. Look at the poll, very quickly, look at the polls. Climate change and COVID are now way below inflation, immigration, education, crime, and of course national security as a top issue. And so John Kerry just wants to be popular at Davos. He wants to make sure that he's lecturing the rest of us over his furrowed brow and that he's popular among the fashionable crowd internationally. Joe Biden continues to confound me in this way. He is not meeting the issues that Americans are very clearly telling every pollster are most important to them. So he's not even preaching. He's not even preaching to the choir. He's talking in the middle of a road to absolutely no one, with actually his back to the camera, which I thought was a perfect metaphor. Joe Biden turning his back on the country.
It really is. Clay, there are no other networks with reporters actually asking questions at the border. When Bill Melugin and others do, Honduran migrants say openly, I'm just waiting for May 23rd, because on May 23rd, I know I got a free ticket.
Pete, think about what we got going on here. The White House is still trying to defend the idea that we all have to wear masks on airplanes and while we walk around in airports because of COVID, while simultaneously telling us that the border, they don't need to have COVID emergencies anymore, so Title 42 can be removed. You can't make sense of that. And Biden himself actually got asked about it. I know you saw it and everybody saw it earlier this week, and totally bungled that response. He confused the two. And if you watch the tape that you just played from Seattle, this is unfortunate. Look, there was a lot of talk, and I know Kellyanne heard it, about the 25th Amendment surrounding Donald Trump. Joe Biden has dementia. I don't understand how you can watch him. Every single week, he's getting worse. He's not making any sense. His speeches, even when he's reading directly off of a teleprompter, often don't make any sense. The bizarre whispering, the turning the back, who is he talking to? The shaking hands with people that don't exist. This is a guy that is not in control. And I don't take any joy in it, because all of our enemies are taking advantage of the fact that we have an empty suit right now in the White House, and it's only going to get worse over the next couple of years. And Pete, he's telling everybody, at least Obama reportedly, that he's going to run for re-election at the age of 82. This is madness. He is in worse control of his faculties than any president we've ever had in modern American history. This is an embarrassment. I don't know how we get out of this mess, but I know it's not getting any better.
There are some moments when playing the what if it were Trump game is quite useful. And if Trump had done 1/10 of the things that Joe Biden is doing now, every cable pundit and other channels would be yelling 25th Amendment. There's just no doubt about it. That's not conjecture. That's what we know would be happening. But you mentioned the scary part of it, Clay, and that's where I want to go to you, Charlie. This has national security implications. I mean, first of all, the sovereignty of our border, and now you have the commander-in-chief obsessing over electric vehicles in our military and making sure we don't emit because of climate change, as opposed to, I don't know, figuring out a way to stare down the communist Chinese, should that happen. I mean, when you look at it through a national security lens, we look fundamentally unserious.
Oh, and we are fundamentally unserious, at least Joe Biden certainly is. And, you know, one of the arguments that the administration makes about the Title 42 is that they're bound by law. They have to respect the particulars of the law that brought about Title 42 in the first place. And well, my goodness, are you kidding me? When did you start caring about the law? They ignore the law every single day on the border. They refuse to enforce the laws that are on the books, that have been on the books for decades. They refuse to enforce any of those laws. So this idea that suddenly they care about the particulars of the law, as Clay points out, at a time when the administration, on the other hand, is still trying to enforce COVID regulations. But of course, everything is political with these people. Everything is lawless with these people. And this display today, and if there's anybody in Washington who is as big a buffoon, perhaps a bigger buffoon than Joe Biden, it's John Kerry. And these are the two greatest foreign policy experts Washington has been able to produce for going back at least 20 years. And they have created every crisis that we are facing right now. And so many of these crises are caused or made worse by this lunacy about windmills and destroying our energy independence. That's why Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, is because Joe Biden is in the White House and because he ran off after the, you know, unicorns in fairy dust, trying to destroy America's energy independence.
You're exactly right. And yet, Kellyanne, as we talk about this, there are young Texas National Guard soldiers trying to do a job, one of which jumped in the river to save a migrant and is missing at this moment. And we pray for him and his family, but likely won't end well. There are human consequences to this.
There are indeed. And in fact, just yesterday I was speaking to former members of the Border Patrol, former members of DHS, and they all say the same thing, that unlike never before, as Sarah said, we've got Border Patrol agents doing paperwork. I mean, they're just constantly processing people, handing out diapers, baby formulas, trying to save lives. Because we have a president of the United States and commander-in-chief who refuses to do what this nation has done for decades for other countries to the billions, which is protect our own borders. We have protected the sovereignty and defended the borders of so many other nations over so many number of years, and we're not doing that right here. Now, people are watching this and they know it. Do you know that in most polling, the number of Americans, including suburban women, including self-identified independents, Pete, who care about immigration and border security is higher than when Donald Trump was there, and he made this a centerpiece of his campaign in his White House. Why is that? Because they know that there's nobody minding the store now. Literally nobody in their right mind minding the store. And I just want to make a quick correction. I understand that we all see Joe Biden failing in front of us, but I want him to eat and own all of his policies. I don't want to make excuses for him because then people think Barack Obama's running the White House or Kamala Harris isn't that bad. This guy and the Democrats should be made to eat and own all of the failing and the flailing so that they walk into those midterms elections in November and don't know what hit them.
Clay and Charlie, we're almost out of time. I'll do 30 seconds each, same question. Do you think this White House, based on what Kellyanne said, understands how disconnected the things they're pursuing are from what people are feeling? Clay.
I feel like they are trying to intentionally tank, Pete. Like, this is a situation right now, I can't explain it in any way. It's like when you're trying to get the #1 pick in the NBA or the NFL and your team keeps intentionally losing. They are incompetent on a level I've never seen before. That's what feels like right now.
Charlie, incompetence or ideology that blinds them, or both?
No, I think that they're just completely seized by this ideological craziness, and they can't see anything else. And my one question is this: you know, this week we saw Jen Psaki burst into tears talking about that law in Florida to stop people from teaching kindergartners about transsexualism. Will she cry for us over that Texas National Guard? That's what I want to know.
It's a great question. It's a great question. Kellyanne, Clay, and Charlie, great panel. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.